If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, 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 blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah,
Good vibes.
blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
And that they are simply that point of observation of the greater universe, the greater energy dimensions that are out there. And that's really where we are now, right? I mean, this is why the world's in such, I would suggest this is why the world's in such turmoil.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. Happy Halloween. Coming at you with Tim Walter, an interview I wasn't here for. I believe he's a Brit.
Yeah. Yeah, actually from right around the corner from where my mom was born.
Wow.
And where I went and visited up in Yorkshire near Skipton.
Skipton?
That's where my mom was born. Yeah. So I just have fond memories of driving through the Yorkshire Dales and stuff. And I think it was the Yorkshire Dales. I don't know if it was the Dales or the valleys south of Skipton, but I'd have to sort of really try and figure that out. It was so long ago. But yeah, I just love that area.
Are they all Yorkshire this, that, or the other? They're all Yorkshire something?
I think Yorkshire's a fairly big, like, I don't know, state, province, whatever you call it. There's North Yorkshire, and then he's out of Richmond, North Yorkshire, and I think Skipton is about 100 miles or an hour drive, I think, south. But I mean, you don't have to be far to be an hour drive because you're winding your way through old country roads that turned into real roads, probably. Anyways, what a pleasant surprise for Halloween, really, to have this coming out. House healing. It's about dowsing. Like, his story is fascinating about dowsing, and he moved out to the country from sort of a city job, a city life, and a city job, and he found his house. There was a guest. There was a guest in his house when he got there. When they got there, and three ladies came over. One of the
like a ghost guest.
Yeah. One of the contractors was like, "Something's up with your house," and the guy. This is like a normal, like a guy that would do renos in your house, and he brought three ladies with dowsing rods, and they went around the house doing all this stuff, and he started communicating with this spirit named Jane, and it led him down this whole path of dowsing and house healing. Basically, now he does. Where they do like a whole grid of your house, like they'll do a floor plan of your house, and they'll do like 50 points of these dowsing and questions and stuff all the way through the house, and try and figure out like what's there energetically and how many layers of all this stuff. I can't really explain it, but it's pretty fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now he does it. He's got knightsrose.com. I'll just quickly do a sort of like a bio now that we're talking about it, but he uses the subtle energies of places where people live or work as part of a healing modality to create well-being and peace. So he dove down the dowsing rabbit hole. Like he learned from some of the best guys. Actually, a guest that I want to have on, but I actually have to send him a physical letter. He doesn't communicate electronically. And the other guy that he wrote a book with, called The Sun and the Serpent, and that book is, I've got a note in the show notes, The Wee Book of Dowsing, and it's from Hamish Miller. So he's like just this guy who was just dowsing through all the lands and the terrain, like figuring out all these energy points and lines and intersections and stuff like that. So he went down this whole rabbit hole, and then they figured a way to sort of like do this house by house in certain sections, like do it logically through houses. He also works remotely to rebalance the living or working environment through a combination of intuitive dowsing, spiritual healing, and practical life coaching. So he does some mentoring, some workshops to connect house healers around the UK. He moved to a Georgian townhouse where he encountered a guardian spirit who just wanted to be part of the family. Although a slow process to reach complete acceptance, life has never been the same since. So, yeah, really interesting guy, really interesting story, and good to get into dowsing for once. I don't think we've ever really got into it too deep.
Didn't we? No, I guess not. I think
We
I
always
have
talked
some.
about it, but-
I think I have some dowsing rods around here somewhere.
I know he was saying we should bring some to Egypt, actually.
Are they the copper ones? I was going to take my
I have-
binoculars to Egypt, and someone told me they might take them away. I paid a small fortune for my hunting binoculars, so I can't risk that. Now I'm wondering.
I know, but he said you can bring these little fold-out dowsing rods, or just bring little dowsing rods in and just pull them out, and you can use them. And
The ones I have that are here are copper, I think. I don't see them. I thought they were sitting
Would they
right
have a
here.
little tube, little copper
Yeah,
tube? on them?
yeah, little copper tube
I
handle.
thought I had a pair of those around. I think somebody must have bought them for us at one of our contact at the cabin events.
No, I
was
think it
thinking-
was Brian from the Hat, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to?
Working, man. I was going to say that last weekend too, but I don't want to be like.
Last time you said you were working
but
while you were posting memes on the toilet.
I have. I mean,
Hard at it. I'm posting memes for free. I didn't know.
well, we're that because we have. Well, you created a Grimerica Telegram now, so it's easy for me just to post relevant stuff from other telegrams to there, and also we have the Discord has now been relaunched, so we have the Discord going too. There's a AI art generator in there that people are blown away by. Cyrus has been doing some stellar work on the AI art. It's been quite incredible. Graham Dunlop, the King of the Dwarves, is quite astounding.
What's this in the Discord?
Yeah.
Huh. Is the Discord bumping?
No, not really. No, it's slowly. It's not, it's not really like near where it was, but we got that going again too. And then we have our other chats, right? In the Mattermost.
Grimerica.ca/chats.
Yeah.
That's where you find me. I'm currently on a Twitter suspension and a Facebook suspension.
Oh, dude, we got to talk about that. And YouTube. I was just reading
And
through
a
the
YouTube
to try and-
suspension.
Are we not allowed to? I don't think we can post on YouTube.
Let me check.
right?
Let
I
me
mean,
check.
they have-
Here,
well,
you
they
keep, can you
haven't been-
keep talking for a minute?
Yeah. Darren's just going to bring up our YouTube channel, but I want to talk about this because, Dave Zed, and a fellow Canadian who's also in the Union of the Unwanted. I'm going to read this because he just posted this, and he's not saying it in any kind of egotistical way, but he just got his final community guideline strike on YouTube. So this is where we're at. This is why it's important to support your independent media. I mean, I feel like this is a culmination of, I don't want to get too negative, but he got his final community guideline strike on YouTube shortly after he started posting my anti-gravity free wireless energy videos, and I only started posting them in the last 72 hours. I got my final strike for scientific misinformation, not medical. They specifically said scientific. Even though I've presented to various branches of the DOD who are trying to get me under NDA, because the thing that when one cracks, we'll be able to, one cracks what we call anti-gravity, you are then able to understand things like everything they've been calling quantum physics and stuff, is what he's saying. So he's not trying to boast or anything like that. But I mean, this is unbelievable, right? So now we can't even theorize about alternate free energy and stuff like that now on YouTube, or we've got 2 strikes on ours from medical misinformation, which is the usual strike.
Yes. Right now we have 2 medical misinformation strikes on. I submitted an appeal, but I doubt though. I don't think. So we can post again as of Saturday. We can post again last Saturday, so we can post again. This
Okay.
episode will go on to YouTube.
Okay.
If you're listening to this on YouTube, it's probably best to find a new fucking place to listen to the show, because they're just going through the back catalog now and listening to the audio now. They're listening. Somebody's listening or transcribing or something, because they're picking up where we complained about
the truth
about jabby wabbies. That might, if we talk
I
about
know.
that, they delete it and say medical misinformation. So we're going to get kicked off of YouTube. It's coming. The first strike expires on December 22nd. So Christmas. It's Christmas. If we can make it to Christmas without another strike.
I see that's what they've done. So we got to chill out for another month and a half still. Fuck.
But there's a bunch of stuff we already said.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
I mean, those episodes that Spotify took down in October 2020 or 2021.
And then they stopped. Do you think they're still doing that?
Well, I mean, how come YouTube hasn't grabbed those ones, I wonder? Or maybe we deleted them off YouTube. I don't know.
We
It's just
deleted a bunch off.
Oh man. So anyways, Dave Zed, I'll link to his show. I'm trying to remember what it's called. He's also got a supporter show with Brandon Thomas from Expanding Reality. Those guys are super articulate and super smart about all this stuff. Dave's kind of combining like physics and quantum physics with ufology and spirituality. It's pretty good stuff. So I'll put a link to Dave's podcast or his YouTube channel. And do I have kids for Halloween already? Would that happen already? Are they out already?
I don't think it's okay to be. I mean, maybe it could be, but I don't think personally that it's okay to be out trick or treating just yet. It seems a bit early. It should be, kind of dark, I feel like.
So speaking of Egypt, do we have, is there spots left?
There's a couple spots left.
We have a last minute opening or?
Yeah, there was a last minute, 7 spots left, I think. Well, technically we're at capacity. We're 61 and we said we were going to max out at 60, but then we had decided to take it up to 70 because a bunch of people were kicking the door down. And then they didn't show up to finish up paying. So I think there's 8 spots or something. There's a few for sure.
They go to unchartedx.com, right?
Yes.
I'll put a note I'll put a link in the show notes for that too.
Unchartedx.com/tour.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find it once you go to that site. It's really easy to find the tour.
Bingo, bango. So what else you got?
Well, I was going to talk about a couple things, and I'll run them by you. But I wanted to stick sort of Halloweeny, spiritual, ghosty kind of. But I mean, there was
that's kind of gay, isn't it?
What?
Isn't that nothing? I'm just saying.
You want to get kicked? Did you say gay?
I did.
You just really want to get us kicked off YouTube. Right?
Yeah, I don't think that's what gets kicked off YouTube. We've never got nailed for hate speech on YouTube. I get nailed for hate speech on Facebook and Twitter. YouTube is always medical misinformation. How can I be racist? I'm an Indian. Actually, you know what? So my mom brought me, because I tend to end up with all the old stuff in the family that mom has. Because my sister, she don't give a shit. So my mom brought this old box. It's great. It kind of matches my suitcase with the latches. The latches that pop out, but it still has the key. And it's from it was my great grandma's or my great grandma's. I can't remember. This old thing with the key. And it's just full of all these pictures from I can't even remember I think the oldest one I found was from 1937.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
A bunch of old pictures. And then there's some older ones in there that are still in German.
Wow.
So I'm part German.
Nazi?
I did not see that coming. I guess that half of me is
Ashkenazi?
English, German. Well, I'm not going by the DNA test. I'm just going by lineage.
Are you're because you're kind of a Jew too, right? I mean,
I don't know about
so
that.
you've got that privilege as well. I mean, you can. So you definitely can't be.
I'm not a Jew. I think everyone's a bit Ashkenazi Jew if you do the DNA test. Honestly, I think the Jews.
No. Yours was way more than most.
It was 1.9%.
That's a lot, dude. Most people don't have.
What was yours?
Much. I don't have any.
You didn't have no Jew in you?
No, I have the Viking.
Anyway, 50% on that side because I'm half Indian. So the other half, my mom's half, is Austrian, German, English, and I think it might be Ukrainian. So can I get some money?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Anyway.
You want to look for your old long lost relatives?
What's going on? What are you looking at?
I thought I left the cat outside.
Oh, and no one cares. All right, what do you got?
Maybe. I mean, there's lots of money going. I mean, the UN. Did you hear what the UN said? Right? Or was it the UN? Yeah. Ursula von der Leyen or whoever. She's like, oh yeah, like the Ukrainians want
Money.
$5 billion a month regular. They want a regular spending amount. So like, or not spending.
The Ukrainians do.
They want to. Well, Zelensky, right? They
Why
want
does
like
it have to come
$5
from
billion or $9 billion or some amount of thousands of millions per month, just steady flow for them. This is like, it seems to me like a really
who's
big
paying for
money laundering. Well, Europe, and they want the states to chip in, and I'm sure Canada will be right.
Oh, I guarantee you.
You know,
that's what got me kicked off of Twitter.
Back into
it was exactly that. He was talking about giving money to Ukraine.
Who was?
Trudeau. Saying Canada's going to continue to give money to Ukraine.
Anyways, we probably shouldn't get into that topic too much.
We probably shouldn't. We can't talk about that. We can't talk about COVID because we need this episode to get on YouTube so that you guys know we're about to get kicked off YouTube. So you can go listen at grimerica.ca and you can listen on a pod player or these other platforms. But the YouTube thing is going away. I'm telling you. It's coming.
And we have another show, Grimerica Outlawed. It's a completely separate feed, and that's not on YouTube. And it
was on YouTube.
That's even sketchier content, not sketchier, but it's more controversial than this. Grimerica Outlawed. It's a whole separate show. Put it in your podcast player. Get that feed too. Those are longer episodes usually. This one's pretty long too, actually, an hour and a half, I think.
Well, you're on the interwebs. Head over to grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly. We are fucking bleeding, boys and girls. We are having trouble with this whole PayPal fiasco. A bunch of people are quitting PayPal. I mean, I wish you wouldn't do that. There's really, there's only a couple of payment processes. I mean, if you want to quit PayPal, I'm not going to say don't quit PayPal because, people are pissed at them. So you do you. But if you quit PayPal, head over to the Stripe. If you just head over there, I think if you don't want to go to the support page, you just want to type it in. I think it's supportgrimerica.com. or supportgrimerica.ca or something like that. But if you just go to grimerica.ca/support, there's a whole couple of buttons there that aren't PayPal. There's a Patreon button, there's a Stripe button, and there's the coin payments.
Yeah.
So you can use all those different ways to support the show that aren't PayPal because so far everyone's just quitting PayPal and the subscription's going away because here's what I think's happening. You're not going in and manually canceling your subscriptions to your shows. You're just deleting PayPal. And then my theory is all of us get an auto-generated email because now that account doesn't exist, all of his or hers subscriptions are canceled. So you have inadvertently canceled your support.
Yeah.
Maybe. America.ca/support. Fix it. Use Stripe. Use one of those other ones. You can support us. Send us cash in the book, cryptos, whatever you want to do. We will take anything at this point because the PayPal fiasco is hurting us over here in Grimerica. Gotta say.
Yeah.
What else you got, compadre?
Well, so I was gonna do this study on the largest nutritionist groups being captured by food pharma and agribusiness companies, but that's kind of not really Halloweenish. I'll save that for another time. That's from Need to Know News. And I also had an awesome article that came out that I thought was very appropriate. Let me find out what that's called. You know what? I can't even find that now. I had it in a nice folder so that I wouldn't lose it, and I've lost it. I'll get it back here in a sec. So, Inoculate the Mind. It's a Substack from Igor Chudov about jab-like inoculations of minds. So it's about a strategy that was to get us, to comply, almost like a mind jab. But I think I'll save that too, because then I went back to something that I narrated a long time ago. That's kind of cool right now in Halloween. It's the blogs at the cdc.gov/public health matters zombie preparedness. and zombie apocalypse. Do you remember that, Darren? We talked about it like a year and a half ago.
I do remember.
And we're like, why are they talking officially about this stuff? But really, they're using it as a marketing campaign to try and get virality around like preparedness, right? So they were doing like teaching preparedness through a zombie outbreak, like a fake one where they're getting people to act like, you know, this is happening. And then they had one in Kansas, like move over, Dorothy. Because the zombies are coming in Kansas. And then the initial article that was preparedness 101 for a zombie apocalypse, which seemed to me like it was the most kind of serious, like this wasn't about virality, which they, like one of them they called required reading. And that was the actual World War Z thing. That was like the test they did, or not the test, but like the, what do you call that? When you do the training exercise kind of, right? That was kind of like, you know, doing it like in a nice, in a creative way to get interest there. The interesting one is the initial one, which is the preparedness 101 zombie apocalypse. And that one has been taken down.
Really? Yeah, because everyone was onto it.
It's no longer there. Why is it no longer there?
I'm guessing because
why did they take down the zombie preparedness from the CDC?
You think because they don't want us to be prepared?
No, I have no idea why. I mean, it just could be a mistake. It could be because people were talking about it too much. It was getting too much bad press. But it also culminated, and this is all going back to 2012. What a year, 2012. So it kind of culminated in a conference at Dragon Con. So the CDC got involved with the CNN at Dragon Con. From a noob perspective, Dragon Con 2012. So they're talking about a Don't Panic panel, which is featuring this dude called Dr. Khan. It has to be Dr. Khan, eh? Director of CDC's Office of Public Health Preparedness, Dr. Pamela Gay, writer and astronomer. Scott Sigler, a New York Times bestselling novelist. Phil Plait, remember him? Astronomer and author.
Yeah, he's
William
a douche.
Wells. And I want to try and skip through some of this. So there's a bunch of advice, and of course this is a panel, right? So they loved what CDC and CNN had to say regarding U.S. preparedness and response. The panel navigated through a series of preparedness questions to showcase how CDC and CNN keep the nation safe before, during, and after public health emergencies, and addressed ways in which the audience can contribute to preparedness. So guess what? I'm going to try and find the best answer here. Guess what the audience could do to prepare.
Me guess?
Yeah.
Stare at the sun.
I'm just trying
Stare
to
at the
find the
moon.
answer now.
Blink.
Where did that go? I thought it was in here. Anyways, I do want to. I'll get back to that, and I'll say that they work closely with the military, so they have somebody from the DoD in the CDC. So yes, all the federal agencies follow the NIMS ICS, and we actually work with the LHDs to include it in the emergency plan. So they're collaborating with that, of course, right? One example is the collaboration in response to the tsunami in Japan. How much do you believe CDC influences entertainment, or how much is the CDC influenced in science fiction? It works diligently to influence the science or facts in entertainment today. See, this is all just great because the context, it's so relevant to what's going on today. Take the movie Contagion, for example. We worked very closely with their writers and producers to ensure the science was accurate. CDC also partners with Hollywood Health and Safety on numerous other media-related projects. Let's see here. Okay, here it is. Oh boy. One of the best qualities one can have when thinking about preparedness is to continually be cognizant of what will happen next scenarios. Scenarios such as don't park the truck there during a hurricane, the telephone pole may fall on it, blah, blah, blah. Let's make sure we have these plans and vendor agreements in place. That's all fine. Everybody would agree with that kind of stuff. We're using entertainment as an educational tool today, allowing us to increase the number of people thinking about their own preparedness and improving the forward-thinking individuals need to be an effective contributor during a response. Keep any stats on anti-vaccination campaigns, hand sanitizer use, etc.? This is from 2012, don't forget. Well, there is an extensive surveillance being done on vaccinations and numerous studies conducted in hospitals regarding hand washing and the like. They're not necessarily focused on the specific scenarios you mentioned, but rather the consequences of not washing your hands, etc. And then they say, is there a focus during the response? 2 comments. I'm just still trying to find that. It seems to have disappeared. Huh. Say something, because I got to find this.
You got to find something. Well, I think, does this count as an oppo? It seems like an oppo.
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
That's what it is. So I'll play the jingle. How's that?
Okay, play the jingle, and then I'll come back with the final.
You got it.
What's that noise? Looks military to me. Definitely military. Probably classified, too.
Dishfire, Prism, Sentry Eagle, Sigma, Mannequin, Artichoke, MK Ultra. Operation Project.
It's at the top. It's at the top. Oh my God. Okay, so the public health centric turn in the discussion provided a great opportunity for the panelists to share some actions the audience can take to prevent morbidity and mortality, reinforcing key public health messages, such as the importance of washing your hands,
Wearing a mask.
getting a kit, making a plan, being informed. Okay, that makes sense. And making sure that your children are jabbed.
What?
So, yep.
Sons of bitches.
Thanks, CDC. That'll help during a pandemic or a
Probably just got us kicked off
disaster.
YouTube, too.
Yeah.
Way to go, Graham.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
All right, what else you got?
Oh, I got a quote from our
Your friend.
friend's book.
Ooh, so I should be able to pick this one?
Ad Lucem. No, I don't think you'll be able to pick it.
You don't think I'm going to get it?
Mm.
Wow. What a dick.
It's the profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke it or wrote it down? Profound quote of the week.
Don't walk behind me. I may not lead. Don't walk in front of me. I may not follow. Just walk beside me and be my friend.
Jesus Christ.
That's actually, that would make a lot of sense. Albert Camus.
Ah, close. He's often been called the second Jesus.
Oh, really?
No.
I got another one here. That's my only goal. Surround myself with funny people and make sure everyone has a good time and works hard.
What's the era?
Current.
Current? Joe Rogan.
Bingo.
Really?
Yeah.
Ha ha! Look at me go. All right, what else you got? That's it?
I don't know. That's about it. I
That's
think.
it. Well, happy Halloween, motherfuckers. We hope you guys get lots of kids and candy and don't give them any drugs, or if that's not your thing, whatever, that's fine too. I mean, not giving kids drugs isn't fine. I mean, not celebrating Halloween is fine. The candy is a bit much. I was thinking about giving out apples, but then they're all just going to get thrown in the garbage. I don't know if I'd let my kids eat a Halloween apple. Or the old razor blade stories.
I know. That was what we grew up with. Yeah.
Do you still check the candy? Should I be checking my kids' candy for razor blades? I feel like,
No.
no, we're past that, right?
Yeah.
Or like checking them for edibles, but no one's giving away their edibles. They got so high, he gave away his edibles. All right, guys, happy Halloween. We hope you enjoy the chat. What's his name again? I wasn't here for it.
Tim Walter.
Tim Walter, haunted houses. The opposite of haunted houses.
Yeah, healing houses.
Healing houses. Is it just haunted houses that need healing or every house?
No. There's all kinds of different things that can be cleaned up. Like it's not all spirits haunting and all. There's geopathic stress that's been built up over a long time. There's ancient, war grounds, burial grounds. Like there's all kinds of crazy earth energies. It's all different stuff.
There you have it. Enjoy the chat.
Tim Walter, thanks for joining us on Grimerica. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, this will be great. I was researching your stuff a little bit, and there's a bit of a resonance there with my mom was born in Skipton.
Oh, wow.
So I was searching like how close is Skipton to where you're kind of normally, and I think you're like an hour away or something.
Yeah,
it's pretty close.
That's about right. Yeah, it is. In fact, my wife, although she works a lot from home, the offices that she goes to is based in Skipton, so she works.
Okay.
There you go. That's a connection. That's great.
Well, and I've been to the UK a couple times, just driving around, kind of castle hunting with the family, or just driving through the Yorkshire Dales to Skipton, and man, I just have like intense memories of, and not clear enough, but just that landscape. That area really just sort of resonates with me. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
It is. It's a national. Well, we're lucky enough to live in the Yorkshire Dales National Park. So, I mean, it is a tourist centre. It's a fabulous landscape. It's not an area that I actually was particularly familiar with. Well, even though living in England, obviously I'd heard of it because it's very, very famous. But the landscape is beautiful, and actually we live right on the northern edge of the Yorkshire Dales, up towards County Durham, which is the next county up. So we're heading towards Scotland, really, in that sense. But we're actually kind of a little bit off the beaten track. So we are lucky to be living in a very remote and rural area, and that's what I absolutely love. It's perfect for just being able to exist in a little kind of time capsule.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I really love about it.
That's what I've been looking for myself. I need to just get a little bit closer to what you're talking about, a little bit more remote, a little bit more rural right now. I'm out of the big city, but not far enough away. But I don't know if I drove through the Yorkshire Dales or not. I just remember valleys, like driving through the roads with these beautiful green valleys on either side. So I kind of figured that sounds like Dalish enough. But man, I just love that countryside.
Yeah, well, if I think over there in Canada and the USA, you get All Creatures Great and Small, whether it's the series from the 80s or the current one that's being put together. Basically, that is a series about vets. It's based in Yorkshire, and it does a great job of just capturing the landscape. Landscape's important for us all, not only from the point of view of giving us space, headspace, but, maybe we'll talk about some of that.
Yeah, because it does have to do with your dowsing work, right? I mean, because do you notice sort of different places resonate, different beautiful spots like that are sort of this beauty that's left over has a different energy to it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody, I mean, the thing is, that anybody actually does resonate like that, whether they realize they're doing it or not. So, if you're house hunting, you talked about house hunting just now, but if you're house hunting and you're going to look at a building, castle hunting, we're going to have a castle. That's fun.
But I mean, that was because we were just looking at the map and seeing like a little castle on the map. And this was back in like the late 90s or early. And we would just drive to it and find out whether it was like a ruin or a massive like Hollywood style castle. I mean, it was just, that's what I meant by castle.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So most of them around here are not really very Hollywood style castles, but hey, there are some nice ones. There's a nice one. I'm trying to think where it is. Redcar, fairly close. But the point is, if you're house hunting or castle hunting, actually, because if you stop off and you go and visit a castle, anybody will get a vibe from entering that space, from being in a different building, from being in you walk into an old castle and you're in the expanse of the open space, the keep or whatever it is, then obviously you get a feeling for that. You go into one of the dungeon areas of the ruin or whatever, you're going to get a different feeling. That is all, intuition, really. I mean, obviously there's an effect that you're getting from the visual impact of the architecture or the ruins at that stage in a castle. But if you think about a space, a house, then there's an impact that you get visually from the architecture. There's an impact you get from the decoration. But but more than all of that, when people say, "Oh, the wow factor, I love this building," it's what it feels like. And so that's a very subconscious kind of input. And you get that from different spaces in the land. And you go to different countries, and it's very noticeable that different countries have different feelings. So, I spent a bit of time when I was towards the end of my time as a video producer. I was in a few different parts of India. And my God, India just feels so utterly different. I don't know whether you've ever had a chance to get over there, but it's amazing. It really is quite extraordinary how different it feels. So everybody has that. It's a natural instinctive reaction to a place.
So speaking of traveling, so I'm going to Egypt soon for a couple of weeks on a tour. And I don't think we're not really allowed to bring like measuring devices, which would include like scientific devices like lasers and measuring devices, but it probably also includes, because you're not allowed to meditate or sing or do anything else like this in these places that we're going. So there's no like spiritual activity allowed. So I probably wouldn't be allowed to bring like dowsing rods. Or is there something I would be able to bring like that would help my intuition in these places? Like
I think that, well, unless it's changed recently, some 10 years ago, you certainly could douse around some of those tombs. There was, again, it wasn't, I wasn't shooting this particular footage, but I was editing this for a producer, and she was a dowser, and her technique of dowsing was actually, it had a propeller effect, when you hold a dowsing rod that they can really spin. Hers, she was in the King's Tomb, I think it is, in the Great Pyramid, or something like that, a very well-known tomb, and the blinking rod actually span helicopter style out of the holder that she was using. It was such a strong vortex, right? It was a brilliant, fantastic bit of footage, really, really dark and grainy. So I would, if I was you, if you've got dowsing rods and you do douse, I would pop a couple of rods or one rod into your suitcase and just take it and just see what happens. Or those little extendable ones, that you can get those extendable ones, are fantastic. Because actually, although you can kind of douse with your body or your hand and fingers and get a response and stuff, it's not as reliable as feeling like you've really got something going. Or a pendulum, if you're happy using a pendulum, if you've ever done dowsing with a pendulum, use that,
That's kind of what we're kind of going out of order here. We'll get into your background and stuff first, but just jumping around all over. I was going to ask you, like, one of my main questions is, what's the difference from the traditional dowsing, like using rods, let's say for water, but the difference between that and divination, like through kinesiology or pendants? I mean, it's all fundamentally the same thing, right? So dowsing
okay, let's just look at what is dowsing. How might it work? Because still nobody really knows, but actually we kind of do, because actually it's pretty blinking obvious that once more understanding about quantum science emerged, then it's pretty obvious that what's happening is that we are connecting, as any meditator does, connects into that quantum field of information that is available and permeates absolutely everything. And so therefore, when we're dowsing, what we're doing is we're basically asking a question. We're asking to try to find something that isn't visible in the physical world, whether that be water that is underground, or if you want to talk about spiritual dowsing, and then talking to an invisible personality, or a guardian of a sacred site, for example, or a guardian of a pyramid. There's one for you. But so what you're doing is you're asking a question and you're expecting to get a yes or no response. Now, if you're holding a dowsing rod, a right angle rod, primarily, usually what happens is that the yes response is that it will swing towards you, and the no response is it'll swing away. It doesn't always work that way. Some people have the opposite reactions, and that's fine because it's a completely independent process. So the rod really is only a meter, if you like, of what the body is picking up, because it's the body that's picking up. So you're asking the question, you're diving in, you're getting some kind of intuitive response coming back out from the field. Subconscious is processing that, and the subconscious is making your muscles move at a very tiny, minute level. So our bodies are physically moving these rods or the pendulum. It's just that our consciousness isn't aware that that's what we're doing. Now, cynics and critics say, well, yeah, you're doing it, and it's the ideomotor effect. And that's what that is called. The subconscious interaction, the subconscious movements of your body, that's called the ideomotor effect. Which actually I think is quite appropriate, but what none of that description actually goes into is what is going on in here for the dowser. Now, obviously, we're on audio, so I'm touching my head and touching my heart at the same time, because as you're dowsing, as an individual is dowsing and accessing information, there is a whole stream of inner dialogue, if you like, or inner visualization that's going on, inner collecting of information, and that's the important thing. And it's that information that actually you can actually bring out and get some really interesting stuff with that inner dialogue. So you asked me what's the difference. So some old guy walking across a field with a forked stick with a bit of wood, a forked twig, looking for water, he's still doing that process. He's still asking the quantum field of possibility, where is the water in this field? And as he walks over it, he will get a response from the bit of wood. So it doesn't matter that it's a bit of wood, it's a muscular response. And the way that those old dowsers hold those things is they're very, there's a really strange way of holding them, but they're under pressure. So the smallest muscular twitch, and there, whoop, up it goes, or down it goes, whichever way, to indicate the water. Now, if you're looking for something else, like, if you're using a pendulum and looking on a map, what you're doing is, if you're looking for an oil field, because, oil exploration companies use dowsing as a way of kind of identifying areas to look at, as well as the geology, obviously, land are not stupid. But, so if somebody's doing that oil exploration on a map, they'll look at the map. The map acts as a target for the connection from the dowser into the quantum field of possibility, collecting the information that they need, bringing it back, getting the response on the pendulum, and so therefore, again, it's all done in the dowser. So it doesn't matter what the actual implement is, right?
Okay.
So you can douse with implement. Dowsing rods can be made of plastic. They can be made of metal. They can be made of wood, and pendulums can be crystals or rings on a chain, thread, blah blah.
So it's not. I mean, I guess I always had the idea that the traditional sort of water finding dowsing was happening from the energy of the water itself, or some sort of non-visible current that we can't see. There used to be the line of thought that
it was a radiation of some kind. So, decades ago, dowsers would say, well, there's obviously some radiation coming off this stream or this object that we're picking up on, and and reacting to it. So when I say that we're connecting into that quantum field of possibility, what I'm really saying is that item, yes, I mean, there may be a magnetic field coming from it, but if you go into the depth of the connection, then you're going down, into the atomic realms and down into the quantum realm. And when I say it's in that field of infinite possibility, it's because I really get excited by the idea and the concept that we are constantly co-creating our realities that we experience. And that becomes applicable when we start to talk about house healing, which we'll probably talk about later on.
Yeah.
But that's the mechanism, and that's why I tend to talk about it in the terms of citing the quantum field of infinite possibility.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, I want to read a couple paragraphs from this book I was narrating today and yesterday, because it seems to have a direct implication to what we're talking about. Not implication, but direct reference to it. And it was written like 130 years ago from Annie Besant. It's called The Ancient Wisdom. So it's talking about the summary of the theosophical teachings and stuff. But she's mentioning it as far as like, and I kind of wanted to ask you this before we read it, but I think she mentions it as far as like different elemental energies. And some people resonate more with certain elementals or not. So some people might have an easier way to douse water, for example, than different types of divination, maybe.
Did you want the comment on that before you read the section?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, excellent. Well, the Theosophical Society is a fantastic reference, because that was a real mixture of spiritualism and a kind of a spirituality, more of a modern sort of spirituality, if you like. And so, yes, she's absolutely right. And again, this is one of the things that we really highlight in the healing work. The way that I look at everything is that it's the individual, unique connection with your own parameters in your own universe. As far as I'm concerned, I'm living in my own universe. Now, this sounds very egotistical. This is not the point. So just bear with me on this. So I'm living in my own universe. So the way that I respond to everything in my universe is fundamentally different to the way that you respond to everything in your universe too. Right. And that's really what she's saying there, where she's talking about the way that some people will respond to water elementals, some people will respond more to air elementals, and some people will respond to fire elementals and this sort of thing. And when you talk about spiritual work and subtle energy work per se, it's really important that you understand your own connection and the way that you function in relation to what it is that you're picking up, because it's all based in the subjective arena. It's not objective, which is why you can't objectively and in a detached way conduct experiments on this stuff, because it's like saying, what does honey taste like? Right? And you can't do that. You can't identify that. What you can do is pull honey apart and you can look at the molecular structure of it and say, well, this is what it is, and this is great. And somebody will, you'll get the expert honey taster, and they'll say, yes, this is from bees creating it from lavender or from roses or whatever. But you can't share the individual experience of tasting that honey. Now, the same thing applies when you're dowsing and doing any of this I will use that word, spiritual work. It's all in the inner universe. It's all in the subjective universe. And every single person is different in the way that they process, because we are unique individuals. I am not you. You are not me, even though we are linked and connected.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So she says here, as the elements enter into the human body, one or another predominating according to the nature of the person. Each human being has relations with these elementals, the most friendly to him being those whose element is preponderant in him. The effects of this fact are often noted and are popularly ascribed to luck. A person has a lucky hand in making plants grow, in lighting fires, in finding underground water, etc. Nature is ever jostling us with her occult forces, but we are slow to take her hints. Tradition sometimes hides a truth in a proverb or a fable, but we have grown beyond all such superstitions. I won't read the next one. It gets into like mineral, planet, vegetable, and animal
Right.
kingdoms and all that. And they talk about fairies and elves, but I mean, that's pretty much talking about lucky dowsers right there, you know? And so we've come back around. So like, this is 130 years ago, they're recognizing all this, and we've gone through all this bullshit materialism and all this trying to figure out how dowsing works. And we're back to the start again.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and that's the way it should be. You know, it's everything goes in cycles or spirals, actually. So we revisit from a slightly different angle, and in a way, what we're doing now is revisiting that. You know, there's as so many people are waking up to their spiritual aspect and realizing that, oh yeah, so maybe the material stuff is not quite so important after all. And that's been primarily led by a lot of the time of the last few years. So we're revisiting the spirituality. We're revisiting the spiritual and subjective aspect of self as being a human being, and we're really asking the question: what is a human being? Because a vast proportion of what we are is non-physical. It is our ability to exchange information, to exchange ideas, and to interact with each other, and the other aspects of nature. Remembering that we are nature, we are not separate from nature. And that's really absolutely fundamentally important. And of course, what your lady there is saying is absolutely spot on. You know, the more sensitive a person, the more they will be able to be open to the nuances of different aspects that can be represented by the elementals, so nature spirits, in places in the wild, or indeed, you know, sometimes we get trouble with elementals in houses. So a really sensitive person, somebody that is very sensitive and possibly oversensitive, can encounter these energies on different levels, and they can be represented certainly in their internal world, or some people do perceive them to be in the external world as well. So more as the, you know, visual category, but they can be seen and interacted with, and some people are just amazing like that.
So
kind of lost my thread on that. Go on.
How did no? That's good. I mean, it's perfect. It was making me think about how once you get into that oversensitivities, it's really hard to sort of to keep following along, you know. Even if you believe in all this stuff, it gets so crazy that you're like, well, I don't really want to go that far, you know, because it's so subjective, and it's just like right now there's enough tangible mysteries or tangible problems to be looked at. It's becoming difficult.
Well, this is one of the problems that we do actually face, and in a way it is a reflection of the way that we are now at this time sharing more of our personal beliefs online. So there is so much information that is available to everybody. And the algorithms of the internet are such that they will always pair like for like. So therefore, what it does is reinforce your own individual belief patterns, and that's fine. Except what we need to be aware of is that actually the process I was talking about with dowsing, which is where where the conscious mind is accessing the quantum field of infinite possibility and drawing information out. It is, as I said earlier on, the infinite possibility. So therefore, we as co-creators, because we are, I mean, there is no doubt that we have a role or in the creative process of experiencing our own realities. And in that process of identifying information that we want to draw out with us, we are basically telling our own story. We're telling a story and we're creating a story that we are then living. So this is a very real issue that you your finger on, in that actually one of the big things about working in the subtle energies. And it's one of the aspects that I teach people about, not only if they're my clients, but also in the house healing courses that I do, is it's really important that the person, the individual, understands that they are in control of what comes into their reality. Okay. So quite often with clients, if clients come to me and say, I've got this weird stuff happening in the house, and they might be manifesting as a spirit, or it might be manifesting, even as we were talking about elementals, it could be playful elementals mucking about playing silly buggers. But the point is that the person has chosen, whether it be conscious or unconscious, subconscious, to believe in the process, believe in the situation that is occurring. And therefore, it is being manifested in that feedback loop of constantly being recreated. So part of our job is to actually, I mean, not only we do some of this energy rebalancing with upstairs, and again, we'll talk about that later if you want, but part of our job is to help that person see that they are still in control of what they choose to accept and respond to in their life.
I think one of the main things you said to somebody when I was watching your sort of Dowsing Q&A kind of when you did a live stream where you're answering people's questions, and I think one of the main, and it was somebody that was, I think, in fear of this being sort of like a sinful thing or connecting, and I think your advice, and you can correct me, but was sort of like what you're saying there is don't fear it, or don't be worried about it. Like you're bringing that on your, like if you have sort of a more a different intention, it will be okay.
There's a lot of times what happens is that a person gets to a certain age and they get to a certain stage of their life, and actually it's like, okay, well, I'll just say it. It's like the management upstairs. So the beings, the forces of the forces of creation. I'm only laughing because I read the comment about is it Darren, isn't it? Your engineer. Who's a little bit more cynical than you are.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I start to think about the management and talking about the beings that are, out there, I'm thinking, oh yeah, Darren's going to love this. Anyway, point being, what seems to happen is that there comes a time with quite a few people that actually the management say, right, okay, you've had enough. You've been living your life. We need you to do some things. We need you to be aware of this aspect of yourself. And so what happens is that, it's what happened to us is that there was an incursion into our awareness from what we thought was a ghost. So what happens is if that incursion occurs for somebody and comes out of the blue and is like a real shock or something that actually scares them, then it might well not be the intention of the management to scare the individual, right? So I'm making a bit of a deal talking about this.
That's a good point, because it's not all about intention. It's because some things will happen as a shock, like.
Yeah, I mean, there is a, in all processes of change, there is a tiniest element of chaos. So, and this is what's traditionally, you were talking about ancient wisdom. This is what's traditionally sort of recognized as the trickster energy. And it's a tiny element of chance. So that can sometimes, raise its head, and you can get spiritual interactions occurring, which is where the management are basically saying, well, look, come on, it'd be really nice if you now paid attention to this side of your life. Let's put this in here, send in a spiritual being to start prodding. And so the person then gets terrified because they start to be prodded. And they've been, aware of Hollywood movies and the horror stories of all of that stuff, which, quite frankly, mostly is nonsense. But really, actually, if the person changes their view and understands that, oh, well, actually, this prodding is for a purpose. It's like somebody just tapping you on the shoulder saying, do you mind moving so I can get past, or whatever, meaning that it's a helpful thing, not something that's there to be terrified of. So quite often it's a shift of perspective.
Yeah, and how you respond to something, and not the actual event. Like if you get, some sort of ghost event or poltergeist thing happens, it's how it maybe like, it changes, the whole thing changes on how you respond to it. Yeah,
sure, absolutely.
So how did what happened to you then back then when you guys sort of got into all this?
Yeah, well, it was a while ago. It was in 1998. We, my wife and I, decided we were going to move house. A very normal and typical thing to be doing. I was a busy video producer at the time, and we were living in the southeast of England, right down in the edge of the suburbs of London, really, in a town called Tunbridge Wells. Really, really busy, very crowded place. Small little house. And there was one morning where it took me an hour to drive 1 mile on the way to try to get to my clients. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it was like, So I picked up the phone and said, look, we got to move. I've had enough. I'm going to go mad. Basically, there's so much, pressure I felt at the time. Little did I know. But, so we decided we actually ended up in a place called the Forest of Dean, an area called the Forest of Dean, which is on the Welsh borders. And so we travelled, across the other side of the country, but we found that we could buy a large 5-bedroom Victorian house there with a big garden, well, half acre or something like that, quarter of an acre, half acre, something, for the same money as what we were selling in the southeast. So it was like, oh, well, this is lovely. This is fantastic. Now, admittedly, this house was on a fairly busy road, but it was a fantastic house. And it was in need of finishing off. So it was a project because for whatever reason, the people that were there were having to sell. They were, I don't think it was because it was haunted, but anyway, I don't know. We did ask them about, is it haunted before we bought it? But like anybody that's selling it, oh yeah. My wife said, is it haunted? And the lady said, oh, no, not that I know of. And then recounted a story where she had some chickens or something in the house at one point. I don't know. Anyway, that's a red herring. But so, my wife was kind of thinking, oh, well, I'm not sure about this. Because she had a weird experience in the past where she had been kicked out of bed when she was staying somewhere. So that was a bit odd for her. So she was a bit aware and sensitive of this sort of thing. But for some reason, we completely and utterly believed what we were told, is that there was no hauntings going on in this house. It didn't feel, to me, I wasn't overly sensitive at the time, but it felt actually like, well, this is just a really nice house. But it needed a lot of work. So the long and the short of it is that we moved in. And stuff gently started to happen. So we did start to get a lot of flashing light bulbs. We did start to get the TV turning on and off. This is the sort of thing that can happen quite a lot anyway. It needn't necessarily be sort of spiritual activity. But what I was also finding was that I was seeing dark shapes out of the corner of my eye. So I was getting things moving in my peripheral vision, which obviously were silent, but they looked like people. And it was like I was sort of like, I'm going to ignore this. It'll go away, as typical blokes sort of tended to do. But there was one day where I put my hand out. I was in the kitchen just making a cup of tea. I put my hand out to pick up a mug, and there was another arm literally appeared right here next to it, mimicking my action. And it was there for long enough, and it was in my external vision. It wasn't like in my mind's eye. It was literally an arm with a black sleeve on it. And the hand was there. I didn't see the hand very clearly. It was just this arm, but it was there for long enough to look at it and think, and then it went, and it was like, whoa, okay, that is, what was that? No, I must have imagined that as well. So, and then you just go into that imagination thing. So we were getting, as I say, in the flashing light bulbs. We had, what was really funny was, there are a couple of things. I when I was working in a particular room out the back that really needed a lot of work, it was a storeroom basically, but it was part of the house. But the previous owners just junked everything into there, and the neighborhood cats would kind of break in and use it as their litter tray. And, you know, it was a terrible space. And I was trying to do some, you know, trying to clear it up and clean it up. And I had hammer or chisel, I really can't remember which it was. But I was working in there, and I put this thing down, this tool down, turned away, and then turned back again, and it had gone. I mean, it hadn't fallen on the floor. It had just vanished. And it's like, yeah, there's something odd's going on here. You know, and I looked for it. I couldn't see it anywhere. And a couple of days later, it reappeared. You know, I'd taken all my working stuff out of there, but it was reappeared. It was right in the middle of the floor in that room. So it's like, yeah, somebody took it and they've put it back. So what is going on? So we've obviously got something going on in this house. And around that time, we had builders in to give us a quote. And funnily enough, he's not the sort of guy that you'd expect really to be talking about this stuff. But he said, look, it's a lovely house, but I think you need to get it spiritually cleared. And we said, what do you mean?
Wow.
What's that? You know, what do you mean by that?
This is your neighborhood contractor coming by?
Yeah. This is a builder. This is like an old grizzly builder who was like, yeah, I think, yeah. But the point was, of course, that his missus, his wife, did this sort of thing. So now, bearing in mind that no money changed hands on any of this, right? So it's not like he was doing it because, you know, the wife can get a few pounds in. But the thing is that he said, right, if you like, I'll get my wife to come round and because they like to investigate this sort of thing. And so we agreed to that. And what I tend to say is that these three ladies turned up one day, like the three witches of Macbeth. They kind of came into the house and they had dowsing rods with them. And it was pretty much the first time I'd seen anybody do any kind of dowsing. They had a little bit of a chat, and then they just followed their rods and they went right out into that back room that I was talking about. And they started talking to each other, and the rods were, you know, whizzing backwards and forwards. And the lady, Mary, her name was, and she said, you've got a couple of dragon lines here, and you've got a guardian. And she's been trying to get your attention, and she just wants to be part of the family. And that's what she said, right? Now, Mickey and I, so my wife and I were like, okay. And this is the odd thing, and people don't really kind of get this because it was incredibly strange and it was really, really weird, but it was also really normal. It was like, well, of course that's the reason why. Of course that is. Yes, of course she does. Of course, and she's welcome to be part of the family. And so we spent probably an hour there with Mary and her friends talking to this, deceased person, this ghost. And there was a story emerged about, well, she used to come down with her mum who used to work to clean the house, and this lady, Jane, her name was, would come down and play when her mum was coming down to do it. And she used to live in at the other end of the village and all this sort of stuff. And they also said that you would be able to find her gravestone in the local church. Which, sure enough, well, yeah, there was a gravestone with Jane Phillips on it and all this sort of stuff. Now, of course, somebody could, they could have gone to the trouble of kind of inventing the story and saying, well, yes, and there's a gravestone there and we'll get them to do that. But, police, who is going to be bothered? You've got to be some pretty big weirdo if that's what you enjoy doing. So fundamentally, I learned to dowse because I wanted to talk to Jane. I wanted to talk to the spirit of this woman. So, and I thought that that's what dowsing was at the time. I thought that's what this thing was, because what I realized was that once I'd got the hang of getting the dowsing rods to work, and that's a whole nother story, then what I realized was that as I was getting more used to doing it, I would get an impression of the conversation that she and I were having. I would get a feeling of this spiritual, this being, this invisible woman basically get a feeling of what she was like, and there was more to what she was saying that I was getting in here than I was kind of getting a response on the rods. But the rods were always confirming or disagreeing with the conversation and the flow of it. It's a bit of a weird concept. But what I'm really getting at is that what I hadn't realized I was doing was tuning into a kind of a mediumship ability, that kind of a channeling ability that we all have, and that's the important thing. We all have this ability. It's all part of us as human beings.
So did you have to, when you first started dowsing with her to communicate, did you have to sort of calibrate it and just ask questions? So that it's spinning one way is yes and the other way is no. So you would ask it yes or no questions. Did it have to start out really simple like that? Or?
Yeah, well, I knew that when you start dowsing, when you pick up rods to get them to work, the L rods, you want to practice a lot, so that you get reasonably confident that actually, yes, your yes response is going to be consistent. And my yes response has always been that they will move inwards towards each other. So that would be the yes response. In talking to Jane, what would be more significant would be the inner conversation. Right. I would be holding the rod and the rod would be moving yes and no. But to start with, I mean, it's like anything, it would be a bit more plucky than, the later dowsing. But sorry, I ate before we started. So the connection with Jane would be was always pretty strong. It was always pretty strong. And part of that reason is because she had a very specific role in terms of she was trying to get our attention because she wanted us to be aware of her, because, as far as I can see, looking back, she must have known how much impact that encounter would have had on my particularly my life. Exactly. I mean, it's a complete game changer.
Yeah. Did that lessen the overt sort of physical experiences that you guys had once you started communicating with her?
Yeah, it did. It did. All of that quietened down big time. What we actually agreed we would do, because she wanted, as I say, she wanted to be part of the family. She did occasionally want to talk to us, to tell us about things, or just to have a chat and to remind us that she was there. So we had an LED clock on the cooker in the kitchen. And we had a mate of mine came round once, and he reset the clock on one day. He was staying with us, and the next day he reset it again, and the next day he reset it again. And he said, "How long's your clock been faulty?" And I said, "No, it hasn't been faulty. It's fine." And it wasn't like getting a power cut and it was just flashing zeros. It was actually just telling the wrong time, this LED display. And so I went and asked Jane and said, "Are you doing something to the clock?" And she said, "Oh, yeah." It's like, well, okay, why? Well, because if I change the clock, it'll indicate to you that I want to talk to you. Oh, okay. So that's what we did. That was the process that we had. And sometimes it was really inconvenient when she wanted to talk. It was like we were just about to sit down at dinner, and she would be like, and the clock changes. It's like, oh, okay. So Jane, do you want to talk? Yes. Oh, okay. What is it? Well, I just wanted to check and okay. Well, I'm about to eat dinner. Is that all right? Oh, okay. Yes. And it's like a really mundane conversation, this sort of thing. Very odd experience. Now, I have to say, I did think in part of all of this that I could be going mad. I really did think at points that I was possibly losing touch with reality, because I was having some anxiety attacks, partly due to the stress of everything else, I think. But there were anxiety attacks, and they seemed to be actually when I started to douse more about earth energy, they seemed to be kind of linked to the earth energy lines, and I was kind of like a bit sensitive to it and all this sort of stuff. But I was having I really, really was questioning my sanity on points. But, you know, the amazing thing was that my brother, I have a brother who's 2 years older than me, and he'd stayed living in the southeast. But he, as this change was going on in my world, he actually was going through a massive change to such an extent that he actually had a nervous breakdown. He was later diagnosed with bipolar, but he was also actually taken to a mental hospital and sectioned under the Mental Health Act because he basically went so far off the edge that he became psychotic. And so what was happening was, as I was like, I think I'm losing it, I could actually look at what was happening to Steve, bless him, and say, well, no, actually, Steve's lost it. I'm still okay. But it was a, you know, I can make fun of it and laugh, and there were a lot of funny times about it and all of that stuff. But actually, some of the aspects were pretty unsettling. And also it went over, it was a long period of time that this happened over as well.
So how did you then transition from that to like actually learning how to incorporate this into sort of a service or to actually house healing?
It's been my life. It is life. It is what life has, you know, the transition of life, the changes through life. Basically, the process was that when we discovered Jane and we started having those conversations, I wanted to learn more about dowsing so that I could talk to her. And I wanted to learn more about what these things were that were called dragon lines. What the heck are those? You know, if I've got 2 of those in my house, I want to know what they are. So I talked to my family. I didn't kind of immediately start to talk to, you know, everybody down the pub to say, oh, we've got a ghost in the house, because basically I didn't want everybody to think I was raving mad. So I talked to my dad at the time. He was alive then, and he'd mentioned it to his sister, so my aunt. And my aunt sent me a book called The Sun and the Serpent by Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst. Now, The Sun and the Serpent, yes.
I tried to get a hold of him.
Yes.
Recently.
Right.
Yeah. He might be the guy that I have to actually write him a letter. Would that be the same guy?
That would be Paul Broadhurst. That would be, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm so glad you mentioned him because I forgot. I'm like, I'm supposed to write a letter to this guy in the UK. Like, I can't even email him or anything. I got to send him a letter.
Yeah. I really don't know whether you'll get him on the show. He's quite reticent about all of that stuff. But he co-wrote with Hamish Miller, The Sun and the Serpent, which was the story of those two. So they spent 10 years plotting the earth energy lines across the south of England that were flowing along the Michael alignment from Cornwall in the south to I can't remember where it is in Suffolk. It leaves the coast in Suffolk. But this guy Hamish Miller, as soon as I read that, and I read a couple of his other books, and then I got on his mailing list. So when he published a book called The Wee Book of Dowsing, he was having a launch down in Cornwall at his home, and I said to Nikki, we've got to go. And I immediately thought, why have I said that? And then thought, it doesn't matter, we'll go. But I really did. I thought, why have I said that? And my God, I mean, Hamish was the most amazing man. He was he passed away in 2010. He had a near-death experience some years earlier, which completely changed his life for so many reasons. But he was such a kind-hearted, philanthropic, intuitive, sensitive guy. But the thing was that he worked with earth energy, and he was a magnificent dowser, and he was an absolute stalwart of it sounds peculiar, but the dowsing community in the UK. Towards the end of his life, he set up something called the Parallel Community, which was about trying to help people actually live as a community separate to and in parallel to the mainstream community.
Wow.
Because he was just
Ahead
so
of
sick.
his time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was so sick of the way that the mainstream was functioning. And
Wow.
there's a little video on my YouTube channel that if you ever had time, you would love, because it's basically the story of his life, and that was the point when he was setting up our community. And he was a fabulous guy, really, really was. In 2010, when he died, I felt not obliged, but I did. No, I did feel obliged because I wanted to honor him. And I felt that because I'd learned so much from him, I'd done 3 video productions with him, and spent a lot of time with him, and just kind of absorbed his, I don't know, a lot of his philosophy, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, not him, but when he died, I thought, well, I either do this now, because I'd started by that time teaching little dowsing workshops, learn to douse and all this sort of stuff, and was doing it on a very small scale. And at that point, I met a guy called Adrian Incledon-Weber, who was a very active dowser. And Adrian had put together a framework of working with a space, with a house, which was very similar to the work that Hamish had been doing. But Hamish was always connecting to the management upstairs and asking them to affect and change something. And so he would heal houses simply by connecting to them and seeing what would happen. And what Adrian had done was to kind of take it all apart and to itemize about 50 or so section. Well, now it's 50 or so section headings. And so I saw that and saw the connection with Hamish. Actually got on really well with Adrian, so we became quite good friends. And really, when my wife and I moved house again, 2013, we came up to Yorkshire. Bearing in mind that Hamish had died in 2010, it was that period of 2010 through to 2013 where really I was starting to set up, well, actually I could do this for a living. There's a process here, and this is what I think I want to do, is to tell people about dowsing. Because it had changed my life so much, I knew that it could help other people. And I'd got very, very, very bored with the corporate world by that time. And really that was just like, I had no choice. I was going to do this. No matter what. And so now I've what I'm working on at the moment is setting up a house healing network. So I'm training people. We've got 30 people in the network, and these are all fairly sensitive. Well, actually, they are sensitive people that understand the principle, and therefore they can be taught to connect to energies in the same way that Hamish did. Talking with the management, working with the management, rebalancing, and it is what I tend to describe sometimes as a process of reality engineering, because it changes the perception that the people have of their own reality in their own space.
Wow, that's well said. So maybe we should define house healing as well, because, I think of that almost like my image that comes to mind is like you're kind of cleansing it or clearing it or something, or you're identifying like where these sort of like resonant spots are or something like that. But maybe we should define sort of what you mean by that too.
Well, that is exactly what we're doing. What we do is we basically ask for the floor plan of the property. And the purpose for doing that is so that we use it as the thing to act as our key to tune in as dowsers. Because what we're doing is we're dowsing the property so we can work anywhere in the world. And I've worked with clients in Australia, America, Canada, all of those. So you use the floor plan, you tune in, and you follow the framework, the section heading. So we're looking for ghosts, spirits, trapped souls. We're looking for EMF interference. We're looking also at the individual's personal subtle energy, whether the chakras are out of line and out of balance. We're looking at elementals. We're looking at toxic lines. We're looking at historical involvement. What's happened at that, what's happened to the land in the past that the house is built on, or the housing estate is built on. If you're building a housing estate on a battleground, it's going to impact the people that are living there. So those are things that we can find out about in terms of dowsing. We can douse for it. We're asking upstairs for that information. So there's 50 section headings that we douse. We fill out, we compile a report, and that's what we send back, and we run the client back through that so they understand what we've been doing. And in the meantime, we're working with upstairs to ask them to rebalance and to harmonize the space. Now, you'll be familiar with saging and feng shui and all these sort of very different sort of modalities for clearing a space, and they're great, they're perfectly valid. And in fact, quite often when we're dowsing a house, we can see whether the occupant actually has been doing that sort of work because of the way that the energy gets given back to us, the information gets given back to us. We can see where protection's been put in place and this sort of thing,
really
which
interesting.
Yeah. And sometimes people don't even realize they've done it. So it's not only do we sometimes get the smudging showing up, but also sometimes if they've got a symbol of protection, like Metatron's cube, for example. Right? So I had a house where I got an energy line coming in, a detrimental energy line coming in, and then it suddenly turned at an angle and went out again. And I'm like, what the hell's that? And the lady said, oh, I've bought a picture. I bought Metatron's cube, an image of Metatron's cube, and it's sitting on the kitchen table. And that's what I'd hit. That's what this line had hit, right?
Great confirmation.
Right. That's brilliant. So it's those little things, it's tiny little things. And what usually happens is that you get several of those little confirmations when you're working with a client. Now, so the aspect that's important is the connection to upstairs. So we're asking them to change the person's reality and to rebalance all of these aspects. So what seems to be the case is that smudging and that sort of stuff is okay. It's all very well. It's rather like dusting, right? What we seem to be doing is doing a deep clean. So that's the difference. It's like either running around with a bit of polish and a duster or getting everything out and clearing it out. And that's what we're doing. So it's really very fundamental.
And you're identifying, actually, I got a couple of questions. So how does it difference? So you're doing each room, like when you look at the floor plan, you're going through these 50 aspects or these 50 things in each area kind of, and then identifying like this area might have something different in the other area, you know?
There are two ways of working on it, because you can either, okay, some of the house healers that I've trained actually go on to do it like you just described. They will actually, if they're looking for spirits, for example, then they'll actually go through, right, room A, right, we're looking for a spirit in here. Is there one in here? So yes, no, yes, okay, whatever the outcome. And then they'll go on to the next room, and then they'll go on to etc. Now, that's because they're looking specifically for specific things in each room. The way that I usually teach it is that actually, no, we don't need to necessarily go into that detail from stage one. You really, what you're looking for is, right, how many spirits are there that are affecting the person detrimentally? Right, okay, there might be 5. Okay, fine. So let's just get a little bit more information about those 5, and you could just ask upstairs and they'll tell you. Now, of course, with something like spirits, then you haven't got any way of verification. There's no real world verification, and you just have to accept that that's the case. So we can only put down what we get given by communicating with upstairs. So, the client has to trust us, and we have to trust ourselves as well. And that's one of the hardest parts about it is the house healer, the dowser, maintaining their trust and faith in their connection. And sometimes you get given such weird stuff. You think, what the heck is this? What am I going to put down about this? So, especially if it's something about an event that might have happened in the house. So, you can get some very strange stuff. So what are we saying? Really, it's more about collecting information about what you find, but you go through each section heading, you work on the floor plan, and you itemize what is there that is detrimental for the people living in the space. And out of 50 section headings or so, you'll probably get maybe 15 to 20, usually different sort of things that will crop up. Some houses are riddled with detrimental energy, and some houses are less so. Each house is completely different, and they're always absolutely unique. And at half the time, there's quite a sort of investigative process that needs to be done, because this is not about us being great mediums or great, channels. It would be really helpful if we were. But what it's about is us trying to do our best to find out as much detailed information as we can in order to actually help the person that's come to us because they need help in some way. And some of the stuff we do is not at all woo-woo. It's, there's an aspect of the talking cure, where you just allow the person to be talking through the issues that they're facing. And if it is that some of those issues are that they've got little beings that come to them at night and hurt them, and you'd have to evaluate what that is and what's going on. And obviously in that sort of circumstance, then usually that's a spiritual clearing. But, there's all sorts of stuff.
So like you said in the beginning, it seems to come back to perception and people's sort of version of their own reality. And that's how it ends up. That's how this sort of house healing ends up being like a change in somebody's attitude or perception.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is why I've absolutely kind of, backed this idea, this concept that everybody lives in their own unique universe, because I see it all the time. And if you talk to a psychotherapist, I mean, you probably have talked to a parapsychologist and that sort of thing over the years. And you'll know from those people that actually that sort of perception is very appropriate. But I just take it that one stage further and kind of suggest that actually it's a very real phenomenon that is what we are as human beings.
So back to that Metatron's cube example, do these idols or sacred relics have power among themselves, or is it all about the power that the person puts on them? Like if it was a picture of Jesus or Muhammad or a Metatron's cube or a crystal or whatever they have reverence for, I mean, would it have that power on its own?
It's an absolutely cracking question. It's the classic, brilliant question, and it's something that I've been thinking about and pondering and trying to kind of unpick for a long time. And I think for many years, I actually thought that the individual items didn't have a separate power. But now, actually, I think that they do have. But I think that power comes to them because they are iconic. They are iconography. They are, so the image of Jesus has a power because the psyche of the species of the human beings has put the power into it. But it also, and therefore it's part of the template of our reality. Okay, so we talk. We're starting to touch on sort of Carl Jung and collective.
Yeah, or egregores and sort of like that. Yeah. I love that. So okay, let me finish that, or continue, please.
No, I'm not sure where I would go. Yeah, ask me.
So
ask
it's
me
both.
something.
So it's both. They would be both then. So it'd be like they have an iconic sort of egregoric power, but also a power because that person is putting their own specific intention into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, actually, this you can't see it, of course, because we're on audio only. But I've got an illustration here on the wall behind me.
Yeah.
Now that illustration is sort of like a bit of a crop circle sort of thing, sacred geometry, that sort of thing. That was basically channeled by a lady that I've been working with. And she's done a whole series of these. You probably can't even see it very well, can you?
I can see it. Yeah.
There's a kind of an impression you're getting. It's a very geometric design. It's got 6 sort of flower type, petally type things. Very, very similar to crop circle design, I have to say. But that in itself has a power. There's an impact that comes from a pattern like that has been channeled. To the extent that actually I'm working with this lady now to create some oracle cards, some cards that we'll use in house healing with these channeled images. But also these are very, very, very similar to an artist called Hilma af Klint, who was a member of the Theosophical Society, a spiritual lady, turn of the century, and actually is being heralded in the art world as one of the early abstract artists. But what they tend to kind of not headline so much is the fact that she did an amazing amount of work in connection with spirit, and was specifically following instruction from spirit in creating some of her work. And it's very much like this. And the thing about this is, and again, I'm pointing to the illustration. It doesn't work well on radio, but the thing about this is that these sort of symbols can be found in earth energy. So these are actually very geometric and structured, but this sort of symbolism can be found in earth energy. And it's the sort of stuff that Hamish Miller was finding way back, and we still find today. So we find 12-pointed stars, along a major kind of energy confluence, for example, earth energy confluence.
Wow. That's fascinating. Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because I had this dream of I was fighting this like demon lord kind of thing, and I wasn't scared at all. It wasn't a nightmare. It was just like I knew I could sort of take this thing, and I went up to it and I squirted hand sanitizer in his mouth. Like I knew that would kill him, like holy water. Like it was, to me, it was like I'm going to use this hand sanitizer as holy water. And then when I can't remember if it was later on in the dream or when I woke up, and I thought it's because it had the power in my head because of all the reverence that all the faith people had put into this hand sanitizer to save them. It was like this sort of collective sort of egregore of almost like a holy water type thing. There's a whole conversation to be had around the concept of demons and the dark energies. It is an area that we can talk about, and perhaps it will be too time consuming to go into today. But, the thing is that as a species, we create a heck of a lot of dark energy ourselves. So there are thought forms, and there are spirit forms, and there are life forms. There are independent aspects of mind that can become almost sentient in their own state, right? So this sort of stuff can detach from the human energy field and be left lying around or wandering around, and you can walk into this. And again, if you're a sensitive person, this is the sort of baggage that you can unintentionally take on board when you walk down the high street or walk down the street or mix with people. But the point is that the darkness, we live in a duality, as you recognize, and the darkness is there because the light is there. And the light creates the darkness, the dark creates the shadows. Human beings are a mixture of both aspects. And as we know, right from, the absolutely ancient yin and yang symbol, I Ching, is it? I don't know, I can't remember. But that symbol that has the balance of the dark and the light is very appropriate. Now, when we're doing work on houses, we're often going into some very dark spaces and that's what's causing the problem for the individual. So when we go into those spaces, we don't go in there with the intention of, I'll use the expression demon bashing. The energies and the beings and the sentience that exists in the dark deserves as much respect, but it certainly doesn't want to be in most of the places that we find it. So we work with it to move it on. It's not a case of demon bashing. If anybody goes in, some people recognize or believe that they recognize their ability to tune into the psychic forces around us, and they will go into a space deliberately to smash the hell out of any psychic beings that are in there. I pity the individual that does that, because those beings will absolutely wipe the floor with them. Because you're going in with hate and malice. So the way you're handling it is with love and compassion and kind of working.
Absolutely.
We had this astral guest on. He was one of my favorite episodes, and he was battling this sort of old hag witch in the astral realm for a week until he loved it, and then that's what sort of got rid of it in the end, destroyed it in the end. It's from love. So
it is. It's a corny phrase, but it is the power of love, because all we're doing is sitting in observation. We're sitting and observing and not interacting. We're not feeding it with similar energies.
Right. Wow, that's great. I like the way that came about, because that's sort of one of the main things that keep coming up here is how do we deal with these dark demonic energies, and how do we heal from it? How do we protect from it? Is it real even? I mean, some people say it's not even real, and I don't even know what to think, to be honest with you. The more I learn about it, the less I know about all this.
Well, to be frank, again, it comes back to what are the rules of your reality? What are the labels that you want to put on it? There's no doubt that, there are fundamental good and evil. There are forces of fundamental good and evil. No matter how you want to describe them or how you want to personify them or not, the fact is that there is good and evil. That's all there is to it. We could say, well, there's love and fear. Well, that's a similar thing. Okay. But there are all these forces of balance. And, it is easier when we don't look at it from a human-centric point of view. And if you can detach your point of view and look at the human beings as part of the picture, then, and look at it from the management's eyes in, then actually you've got a very different point of view to start to work from. And the Buddhist monks, for example, let's take them as a kind of a iconic spiritual teacher or whatever. They can do some of the amazing things that they can do because they understand that they are not their material self, and they're working with the energies of a very high vibration, and that they are simply that point of observation of the greater universe, the greater energy dimensions that are out there. And that's really where we are now, right? I mean, this is why the world's in such, I would suggest this is why the world's in such turmoil, is because what we're seeing is a healing reaction throughout the world. We're actually seeing a revelation of us understanding what we are as a species and our role in that whole balance of light and dark, because we've been kept in a very closeted and very closed and very, very sealed containment for a long time. And part of that has been our own doing. And what's happening now is that actually we're realizing, and science in a way, quantum science is actually allowing us, and neuroscience and quantum biology, for heaven's sake, is allowing us to see that, we have sentience all around us. Consciousness is all around us. And, for us to think that we're the only sentient and conscious being around is so arrogant and ridiculous. It's untrue. So, as we step into this realization that everything really is actually only a matter of everything being in comparison and contrast with each other, there's a wonderful school of thought in quantum mechanics which is about the comparison of everything to everything else, and that's the only way that anything exists. It's not about cause and effect. It's about interaction of things. So things only exist by
interacted with. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, and that's a really interesting way of looking at the quantum physics. And it does appear at the moment that they're actually, if they follow that route, and this is what the guy's saying, I think it's Carlo Rovelli, I think his name is that actually they may well be able to tally, the laws of quantum physics with some of Einstein's stuff, which at the moment they can't. There's a disconnect. But so as we step into our power and realize that we have the power to through our choices individually and collectively to change the experience of everything, because it's the interaction of things, then that's how we will lead out into the next phase of human development, if you like. I mean, that's a fairly major kind of big, heavy topic.
No, it's good though. I like it because we went right from like how to deal with the demonic forces to changing your experience of everything. It's great. So how would you like to sort of finish this off with with your sort of I think, didn't you have a couple books, and also you're doing sort of courses on this? But I do have one other question. Is it worse in let's say like other parts of the world that have had modern civilization around for longer than Canada? Let's say, like, if you were going to be in Canada working on homes in Canada, I mean, we really haven't had any ancient cultures here, you know, we
Well, you have
we were
had
under,
human.
we were under ice for only until 12,000 years ago. So I mean, I guess there's that, but I mean, we haven't had sort of modern civilization like you guys have.
Well, personally, a lot of the houses that I find, I tend not to go back massively far. The energy that I'm clearing, whether it be in Europe or Canada or Australia, tends to be in the last few hundred years. Now, whether that's because well, I don't know why that is. Actually, I hadn't really thought about it, because obviously, you know, some of these countries we could go back to Stone Age.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, are we fresh here with less sort of like, you know, conflict that's been on the land or like underneath your house sort of thing compared to
because it doesn't really work like that though, because it's really you know, what we're doing when we're looking for the information is we're saying, right, what information do we need to be working with that is adversely affecting the individual. So it's, you know, if you've got a battle, you've got a battle, whether it was you know, 1,000 years ago or 10 years ago. You know, so the influence is the same. But you're asking, is the country different? Is there a different feeling to it? Which was really where we started.
Yeah,
the whole
like
conversation.
Is a little harder, is a little bit more, you know, because of the history that goes back, the conflict. I mean, especially in Europe and these areas, like there hasn't been these wars in Canada for who knows. I mean, there might have been many thousands of years ago, or maybe a little bit in the when it was colonized. But you know what I mean, right? It's not so ancient. So.
No, I do know what you mean, and I don't think there's any square centimetre or square inch of Europe that hasn't been fought over at some stage. But you know, so but does it affect us as house healers and the work that we do? It doesn't really. No, it's because actually, like I said earlier on, every house being so different, you know, it's just a different bunch of issues.
What do people seem to like get relief from when you do this to them? Like, what can people? Is there something?
Well, it depends really.
Happens, or it depends on each case.
Yeah, it depends on each case. But I mean, typically, if we're, you know, a standard house healing, if there is such a thing, you know, typically people. Well, I'll relate it to what happened to us, which was when, you know, because Mary did a standard, what I would call a standard house healing on, you know, way back when we first met. At that old house. And so the effect that I felt coming home one day was, oh my God, this is a big room. I hadn't realized how big this room is. So you get a different impression of the space. Sometimes you do actually get people visiting houses that we've worked on, and the visitor will say, oh, what have you done differently? It's so much lighter in here. And so literally there are these perceptions of improvement that do carry through, and they are very typical of sort of people's responses. I was trying to think what, I mean, the greatest thing really is when you get, if you've had people that have got trouble sleeping, or even children that might have complained. You know, we had one recently, and in fact, there was a lady. I don't know whether you caught my live on YouTube this afternoon, but I read a comment from a lady that has been a regular on the channel, and she'd done her first clearing. So she'd worked with upstairs. She'd worked with one of the books and done a clearing, and the mother of this child was saying, well, the child is absolutely, you know, sleeping through the night, not bothered about going into her room anymore, has said that the little girl that used to be there with her isn't there anymore. And, you know, and this is a little child of, you know, whatever, 6 or 7 or something, I guess. So that sort of reaction and response is brilliant. And it's not just kind of like, oh, just the one-off night. It's maintained. It's like, oh yeah, that little kid, the little ghosty kid, doesn't come back. So the child of the, you know, the house is eased. So yeah,
that's great. So how do people find you?
So www.knightsrose.com. So that's KNIGHTSROSE. That's the website.
Knightsrose.com.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Knights of old and roses. Knights Rose. Or go to YouTube and stick my name, Tim Walter, Walter, into the search engine. Tim Walter Dowser or Tim Walter House Healer will find me. Or actually, now that YouTube have changed and put handles in there, you can put at Knights Rose, and that should also throw up the channel. So,
right on. Are you doing any workshops at all coming up?
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me on that. Yeah, so I teach house healing. I've actually got a course starting in November, and I do have one place left on that. If any of your listeners feel that they want to look into this, have a look at the YouTube channel, but equally get in touch with me pretty damn quick, because we're going to be starting that course in a couple of weeks. So if they want to come on board, I do need to have a chat with people and just see if they're a good fit, because there is a certain level of sensitivity that's kind of a good starting place. So yeah, doing that, and keep your eyes open for developments on the Knights Road House Healing Network. We will be producing a public Facebook page for that in the new year. And that really will be a space where anybody can pitch up and ask questions of any of us that are in the network, either doing the work or trained to do the work. So,
right on. Thanks so much, Tim. This has been fun. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you, Graham.
Yeah. And I'll put all the links to all this stuff in the show notes.
Good man.
See ya.
Take care.
And that was your chat with Tim Walter. What'd you think, buddy?
I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Did you?
Yeah. It makes me want to travel to the UK a little bit. And, of course, I'm playing with the ley lines and stuff in my Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So it kind of hits home in a creative way as well. Yeah.
It hits home. Yeah. It's an interesting way to say it.
Get the pun? Get it?
I don't get the pun. What's the pun?
The house healing?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, good pun. Good one. How far is the ley line from here? Can we go check it out?
It's only like an hour and a half. We should go. Really? And we should bring the dowsing rods. We should try that.
I still haven't found it.
It's a ley line intersection. We were told by one of our Grimerica Outlawed guests recently.
That's right. We should check it out.
Speaking of that, Synchro, when was the last time you heard the word noble savage?
I don't know, like a week ago, maybe?
Before that?
I don't know, like 3 weeks ago, maybe?
Really?
Yes.
Because we heard it the same night twice in two separate shows that we did.
There was something else that came up in both shows too. I can't remember what it is now.
Yeah, I know which one. I know what you're talking about too. It didn't come up in both shows, just one of them. But
wasn't both shows?
No, I don't think so. It was in another show recently after those two. Yeah.
Interesting.
Healing type thing, but yeah.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the chat with Graham and Tim. And if you do enjoy our chats around here, head over to grimerica.ca/support, sign up for a monthly, make a one-time donation. We are still hurting from the PayPal debacle, so we could use your support more than ever. In the almost 10 years of the show, it's never been more important to support. grimerica.ca/support. Other than that, we love you guys. We hope you have a fantastic Halloween. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Oh no, I think I've lost my way. Don't know if I'll ever make it back. Look at me, I'm no longer solid, I am abstract. I blow on my survival whistle, point to the horizon. Mercy me, it's so surprising, my world is still intact. I fell out of a hot air balloon and landed flat on a raccoon. SOS, help me soon. SOS, help me soon. Gotta find shelter. I feel like this caterpillar is mocking me in his cocoon. Who made the fire in Plato's cave? Made the fire in Plato's cave. Never thought that I'd be saved. Never thought that I'd be saved. Who made the fire in Plato's cave? Made the fire in Plato's cave. Never thought that I'd be saved. Never thought that I'd be saved till you came along, freed me and loved me and shared with me the beauty of your world. lost my way. Don't know if I'll ever make it back. Look at me, I'm no longer solid, I am abstract. I blow on my survival whistle, point to the horizon. Mercy me, it's so surprising, my world is still intact. Think I ate a poisonous mushroom, fell on my bottom, went boom boom. My tummy hurts, my head aches. Where are my angels, for goodness sakes? Did I pray to the wrong deity? At least let me die with dignity. Who made the fire in Plato's cave? Made the fire in Plato's cave. Never thought that I'd be saved. Never thought that I'd be saved. Who made the fire in Plato's cave? Made the fire in Plato's cave. Never thought that I'd be saved. Never thought that I'd be saved until you came along and freed me and loved me and shared with me the beauty of your world. You are my first, my last, my everything. You are my first, my last, my everything. You are my first, my last, my everything. You are first, my last, my everything, my everything, 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 everything. Who made the fire in Plato's cave? Made the fire in Plato's cave. Never thought that I'd be saved. Never thought that I'd be saved. Who made the fire in Plato's cave? Made the fire in Plato's cave. Never thought that I'd be saved. Never thought that I'd be saved till you came along and freed me and loved me, shared with me the beauty of your